Kael's eyes locked on the robe. He couldn't look away. So beautiful. Folly's eyes went wide. Her fingers reached out before she could stop them, brushing the mystic robe. Beneath the silks, smooth weave of the fabric, a thread of faint warmth seeped through, elusive, like the ghost of sunlight on winter skin. Yumiao let out a soft chuckle. Don't be jealous, little girl. I'll make you an even prettier one soon enough. Volley nodded so hard it looked like her head might bounce off. Yes, thank you, third senior sister. What are you standing around gawking for? Yumiao's gaze shifted to Kael. His eyes were practically sparking. She had to fight down a smile. Put it on, now. Kael shrugged into the robe. He'd always been fine, featured, but the dark silk draped across his shoulders sharpened everything about him, his posture, the angle of his jaw. Something cold and cutting slipped into the lines of his face. Folly's cheeks pinked. Young master, you look incredible. Not bad, Yumiao said, nodding with satisfaction. At last, you look somewhat like a person. Kael's mouth twitched. There it was, the Feng, Wu Iwen school of compliments. His senior sisters had truly perfected the art. Now, then, Yumiao flipped her palm over. No warning, no shift in the air. Just a pale hand pressing flat against Kael's chest. The sleeves of her robe cracked through the air with a snap like a sail catching a storm gust. Let's test the defense, shall we? Light exploded across the robe, gold, crimson, silver, surging and racing in ripples like water hammered by stones. Then the force hit. The strike looked feather-light, but it slammed into Kael with the weight of a collapsing mountain. His whole body blew backward, tumbling across dozens of *Jang* before his back cratered into the ground. Sand and stone geysered up around him. The robe snapped and thrashed, spirit patterns flaring wildly as it ate the impact. Inside his chest, blood and kai surged like a storm-swollen river. His joints groaned. Pain carved through him, so sharp he sucked air through his teeth. Young master, Folly's voice cracked. Cough, I'm fine. Kael lurched back onto his feet, wobbling slightly. Senior sister, a little warning next time. Yumiao studied him with the flat calm of someone inspecting a training dummy. If I'd warned you, you would have braced. Then we wouldn't have tested its true defense. Folly's expression lit up with sudden, absolute clarity. Oh, third senior sister makes perfect sense. Kael stood there, catching his breath. He had the distinct, creeping sensation that logic had just been mugged in a back alley. But he couldn't quite put his finger on how. Yumiao gave the robe a final assessing glance. Decent enough. Below the air, stepping realm, it'll block about half of any attack. Above that, closer to 30%, depends on who's throwing the blow and what method they use. Of course, with second senior brother around, no air, stepping fool with 2 brain cells would dare lay a finger on you. She paused. Wear it into a secret realm, and you'll at least have a fighting chance. Half damage below air stepping. Kael's heart kicked hard inside his ribs. This was a genuine treasure. He'd never imagined a single garment could hold that much defensive power. In a life or death moment, this thing could flip the board entirely. He clasped his hands and bowed low, voice stripped of its usual sardonic edge. Senior sister, thank you. Yumiao waved a dismissive hand. We're family, enough with the formalities. She was already turning away, heading back toward the inner halls. Go do whatever you need to do. I'm going to rest. The warmth in Kael's chest had nothing to do with the robe. Beside him, Folly's fine brows suddenly pinched together. Some new worry had crawled across her mind. What's wrong? Kael reached down and ruffled her hair. Senior sister said she'd make you an even prettier robe. What's there to frown about? Sigh. The sigh came out of Folly for no clear reason at all. Young master has gotten even more good looking. Kael blinked. That was not where he'd expected this to go. Folly tilted her small face up at him, then abruptly veered course. Young master, why hasn't the family head come back yet from chasing that demoness? Kael said nothing. He wasn't worried about Thuron's safety. Yurong Iwen herself was wary of the old monster. In the whole northern territory of the eastern wastes, the list of people who could actually hurt Thuron was a very short one. His real concern was simpler and far more embarrassing. Thuron might have gotten lost. Folly's soul power was fully replenished now, which meant her mind was much sharper than before. She muttered under her breath, obviously not intending to be heard, and just as obviously not caring if she was. Do your best, family head. You have to catch her. Young master's gotten too good looking. Don't you dare let that brazen woman show up and try to seduce him again. HMPH, as if having a big chest makes her special. Kael's mouth twitched harder. There it was. Folly had been learning bad habits from exactly whom he didn't want to guess. Somewhere deep in the wildwood, Kael's half guess had landed closer to the truth than he knew. Theron wasn't exactly lost. But it was a near thing. Kill. Murderous intent erupted like a thunderclap. Theron's demonic kai seethed around him, so dense it looked nearly solid. His pupils had gone fully black. He tore deeper into the forest at a speed that scattered demonic beasts in every direction, their panicked howls shredding the silence behind him. Anything with survival instincts fled the moment they sensed him coming. Sometime later, beneath the twisted roots of an ancient tree, a figure slowly materialized out of empty air. Ione pressed a hand to her chest, still feeling her heart thudding against her ribs. Lucky this maiden keeps a full bag of tricks. That was much too close. She let out a cold snort, then immediately broke into a giggle that didn't match the snort at all. I never dreamed Theron didn't die. And not only alive, he stepped onto the path of true demon. Little brother Kael, this has something to do with you too, doesn't it? Giggle, giggle. The giggling curled through the dark trees. The secrets you carry are far, far too many. Just wait. This big sister isn't the type to give up so easily. Far from the wildwood, Kael shot through open sky at full speed, Uishan City, that Pil had bought him 3 months of borrowed time. He had to find a countermeasure before the clock ran out. He was halfway there when his body jolted to a sudden halt in midair. His brows slammed together. People. 5 auras streaked into his spiritual perception, converging fast. Kael's hand found his longsword before his mind even finished processing. They came from multiple angles, 5 figures slicing through the distance, closing in with the smooth, practiced coordination of hunters who'd done this 100 times before. Blink, every escape route sealed. Kael swept his gaze across them, his stomach dropped. All 5 sat at the mystic spirit realm. The weakest radiated the 7th level, the one in front blazed with the unmistakable pressure of the 9th. And their features similar, familial. The stink of old blood and slaughter clung to them like a second skin. These weren't soft-sect disciples who'd coasted on pills and cultivation chambers. These were killers. Veterans who'd crawled up through carnage, far beyond anything someone like Nero could match. The lead man's expression didn't flicker as he studied Kael. Is it him? Yes, the man beside him nodded. I saw him leave Feng, Wu Iwan with my own eyes. Age matches, appearance matches. Kael drew a slow breath. His mind was already running cold and fast. Who are you? Trouble had arrived, and it wasn't here to talk. Take him! The leader didn't waste a single breath, no explanation, no banter, no chance for Kael to stall. One wave of his hand, and he charged first. He knew Kael was only at the Kai Convergence realm. He came in full force anyway. Pressure crashed down before the man even reached him. 9th level mystic spirit realm, the weight of it pinned the air itself. Die! Mid-charge, a pitch-black saber materialized in his hand, the blade's edge glinting like frozen oil. He brought it down in a cleaving arc. Doom! Kael exploded into motion at the same instant, 2 extreme realms roaring through his meridians, spiritual energy howling at full throttle. The sound was faint thunder, distant wind. His total volume of power was slightly less than his opponent's, but purer, more domineering. Kill me, a murder blazed cold in his eyes. Dream on. He held nothing back. These 5 were no ordinary foes. Holding back meant dying. The longsword swung. From the sword's chipped tip, an inch of sword aura breathed out like frozen smoke. Sword of slaying. In the hair-thin instant between lightning and flame, blade and saber collided. Clang. Metal shrieked against metal. Sparks exploded white-hot. The opponent's saber, a genuine mid-raid treasure armament, split clean in 2. The cut surface gleamed like polished glass. Kill. Kael's roar ripped through the air. His sword accelerated by a full third. The leader's mind blanked for the space of a heartbeat. No time to mourn the saber. The killing intent locked onto him like a cold collar around his throat. His body seized. But his combat instincts were carved deep. Years of bloodshed burned into the marrow. No thought. He forced his Kai into a brutal surge, nearly doubling its speed through his channels. Azure light blazed from his form. The split second of clarity it bought him was enough to wrench his vitals aside by a hair's breadth. Splurt! Blood sprayed hot and sudden, sliding along the sword's edge. The longsword punched through his chest. Flesh tore with a wet, crisp sound that was somehow worse than a scream. Bang, bang. The other 4 landed their blows in nearly the same breath. Spirit patterns across Kael's robe flared brilliant, then guttered like candles hit by a gale. The robe devoured the brunt of it, but the force that bled through still sent him staggering backward, face draining pale. Blood pushed up into his throat, hot and metallic. He tightened his grip around the sword's hilt, steadied himself, stood ready. Eldest brother Jiang, one of the men lunged forward, panic cracking his voice. Are you all right? It's nothing. The leader looked down at the wound punched through his own chest. A cold shudder crawled down his spine. If he'd retreated even a fraction slower, that thrust, it would have gone straight through his heart meridian. Careless, he lifted his gaze back to Kael. His expression had darkened to something heavy and dangerous. This brat, he's not ordinary. A 9th level of the spirit profound realm. A mountain of killing experience. By every measure, this should have been a slaughter. He hadn't factored in the riven blade, deceptively shabby, shockingly sharp, or the savagely strange trajectory of the sword of slaying. One slip, that was all it had cost him. Across the clearing, disappointment flickered behind Kael's eyes. His plan had been clean. Overwhelm the strongest one in a single explosive strike, blow open a gap in the chaos, and tear free. But this man was nastier than he'd bargained for, much nastier. Talk, Kael forced down the churning Kai in his chest. His voice came out frost-edged. He'd already pieced together enough for a guess. Who sent you? A lean man among the 5 let out a sneer that twisted his whole face. Brat, you're about to die. What difference does it make? Isn't it sweeter to die confused? 4th brother, the leader's brow wrenched tight. His voice cracked like a whip. Shut your mouth. Have you forgotten the rules? Cut the chatter and give it everything you've got. This punk is strange. Finish him fast, before any complications arise. Watch his sword. Right. The lean man licked his cracked lips and blurred forward in a fresh pounce. A massive long-handled axe now filled his hands, its cold gleam heavy and solid, another treasure weapon. The axe blade screamed downward and tore the air apart. Force rippled outward, hissing through the dead leaves on the ground. Kill me. Kael's killing intent sharpened, fiercer than before. Then be ready to trade your life for mine. His long sword swept horizontally. Over a dozen arcs of prime arrival, Sword Kai howled into the air, silver sashes of sword light that ripped through space and homed in on every vital point across the man's body. A near-tangible killing intent locked onto the target, a bone, deep chill that stood every hair on end and froze the man's movements for a single breath. Behind Kael, the sharp rustle of breaking air closed in. The other 4's attacks converged in that lightning, flash instant. 2 muffled thuds landed. Under the combined crush of killing intent and Sword Kai, the lean man had twisted half his body aside in desperation, but he had no strength left to defend. Bloody holes burst open across him, flesh torn and gaping, blood gushing. Kael's speed surged, his longsword thrust out. Eldest brother Jiang, save me. The ferocity in the man's eyes shattered. Only pure, despairing terror remained. A wet, heavy sound, a fountain of blood shot skyward. A severed head spun through the air, slammed to the ground, and rolled. 4th brother. 4th brother. Rage split the remaining 4 men's eyes. These 5 brothers had grown up together, cultivated together, killed together. Now Kael had cut one down with a single sword. Grief and fury blasted straight to their skulls and burned away all thought of the bounty. Slaughter him. Kill, avenge 4th brother. In the space of a blink, 4 attacks rushed down on Kael like a violent storm, closing to less than 3 feet. No time to dodge. Even with his treasure robe's protection, a direct hit from all 4 would cripple him, and once they crippled him, any chance to strike back would vanish. Kael's eyes turned bloodshot. Gritting his teeth, he made his choice. The blood spirit art erupted inside him, vital blood beginning to boil. Wisps of red mist seeped from his pores as he prepared to unleash the technique at all costs. A powerful aura exploded diagonally from the side. A spear thrust out of the shadows, its tip shredding the air. At the very last fraction of a second, it blocked the combined 4-man strike. Weapons clashed, sparks flew in all directions, and an annular shockwave burst outward, whipping up sand and dust. An opening. Kael's spirit surged. He didn't bother to see who had struck. He flashed backward and broke free of the encirclement in an instant. The spear's power collided with the residual force, and the recoil sent its owner sliding smoothly to a steady stop beside Kael. Black combat attire, a cold and stern face. It was Ivan, the one who had tested him that day. You, Kael blurted. Ivan was sparing with words. Why are you here? That, Ivan let his spear droop. We'll talk later. Across from them, the 4 men's faces darkened. Never in their wildest dreams had they expected anyone to burst in at the moment of victory. Even more chilling before Ivan struck, none of them had sensed his presence at all. The leader narrowed his eyes and studied Ivan. A flash of recognition sparked in his mind. Shadow. Yes. So you came for the bounty. The man's gaze turned grim. The word bounty hit Kael's ears, and a jolt of warning went through him. Instinctively, he pulled half a step further away. Do not worry. Ivan used a few more words than usual. I harbor no ill intent toward you. The man opposite didn't believe him. After a brief hesitation, he spoke. "Join us, kill him together, and we split the bounty with you." Eldest brother, Jiang, someone behind him hissed. "Shut your mouth." The leader snapped coldly, then looked back at Ivan. "To forge a bond with the shadow is an honor for us brothers. What say you?" "Leave." Ivan remained unmoved. "Or die." "Your appetite is too grand." The man's face frosted over. "You want to hog it all to yourself. If you don't leave, then die." "Fine," the man laughed in sheer fury. "I was ready to give you face and split the bounty evenly, but you refuse. This man just killed my fourth brother. Today, whether for bounty or vengeance, his life is mine. You won't leave." Ivan was utterly curt. "Then die." Before the words finished, he was already a blur skimming low across the ground. His sleeves sliced the air with a sharp whistle, and the force on his spear screamed toward the leader's forehead. "You dare? Get him, kill this one first, then the brat." In an instant, the four swarmed Ivan, strikes raining down like a furious storm. He fought 1 against 4, just slightly on the back foot. His spear flipped and spun, sparks spraying wild, his silhouette shifting laterally, swift as a ghost. A short distance away, Kael raised his longsword. He still wasn't certain whether Ivan was friend or foe, but one fact was solid. The 4 men opposite wanted him dead. Over a dozen strands of prime arrival, sword Kai tore through the air and shot straight for the weakest of the 4, the 5th brother. "Fifth brother, dodge," the leader roared, his voice cracking. Tied down by Ivan, the man had no path of escape, several soft sounds of sharp edges slicing into flesh. An agonized scream split the air as blood sprayed, and the man staggered. Killing intent blazed in Kael, the sword of slaying poised once more. He drove the tip of his sword straight for the man's forehead. Eldest brother Jiang save. The sword tip sank in. A tiny ruby bead of blood slowly oozed from the center of the 5th brother's forehead. His pupils dilated and lost all light. The corpse crumpled softly to the ground. 5th brother. Grief and hatred burned the leader's reason to ash. He no longer bothered with Ivan. His figure lunged like a dying beast straight at Kael. "I'll kill you." Kael's eyelids lowered. The wind seemed to freeze solid around them. An invisible killing intent radiated from his body, spreading like an icy tide. This was no vague bloodlust. It was a concentrated, almost tangible spiritual pressure that pressed down heavily on the hearts of everyone present. A few feet away, Kael opened his eyes. A cold flash of light stabbed from his gaze into the depths of the man's pupils. The assassin's body stiffened as if an unseen ice spike had impaled his spine, freezing him from scalp to marrow. Under the weight of that gaze, his pouncing momentum crumbled inch by inch. It felt as though he had plunged into a lightless ice cellar. The sensation of the blade tearing through flesh came slow but crisp. Kael's long sword sank into the man's body again. Warm blood slid down the spine of the blade and dripped to the ground, tiny dust motes jumping at each splat. 2 miserable shrieks rang out from behind and cut off abruptly. Ivan's figure swept past the 2 corpses like a line of gray, a flash of blood appearing and vanishing so fast it might have been an illusion. Neither man even turned his head before collapsing dead. Second brother, third brother, the assassin stared at the sword tip jutting from his chest, unwillingness twisted into a bitter smile. He fixed his fierce gaze on Kael, lips quivering as if to speak. Kael's face stayed expressionless. The blade in his hand gave a slight tremor. The light in the man's eyes dimmed swiftly, the words never leaving his lips. The corpse pitched forward and hit the ground with a dull thud. An assassin. Kael withdrew his sword and flicked blood from the edge. Talks way too much. He raised his head and turned toward Ivan, brow furrowing slightly. "You're an assassin, too." Yes, Ivan admitted it openly. With a shake, Kael's long sword pointed straight at Ivan, its sharpness fully bared. "Then, are you also here to kill me?" "No." Ivan shook his head, his tone flat as if stating something trivial. "I already told you. I came to help you." "Help me?" Kael scoffed, the sword tip not moving an inch. "There's no friendship between us. In fact, we ought to have a bit of a grudge." Ivan was silent for a moment. Explaining was never his habit, but thinking of the girl back home, he spoke anyway. "You saved my little sister, so I came to save you." "Young Lan," Kael paused, then his expression cleared. "You've seen her." I got back from a mission yesterday and heard her account of what happened that day. And as it happened, I saw your name posted on the bounty board." Ivan paused, his voice still calm but carrying a barely perceptible trace of warmth. "Thank you. Without you, she would have suffered greatly." "No need for thanks." Relief eased the tightness in Kael's chest. He lowered his long sword, though the wariness had not yet left his eyes. "I didn't help her for your sake. If you came today with honest intent, we're even." He studied Ivan from head to toe, voice edged with curiosity. With your strength, and you got into Azure Cloud Pavilion, how did young Gia bully you so badly? The Ivan standing before him now was clearly stronger than when he'd tested Kael that day. Either he'd been hiding his true power then, or he'd stumbled across some other stroke of fortune in the time since. I have no friends, Ivan spoke with unnerving calm, as if reciting a fact from someone else's life. In Azure Cloud Pavilion, everyone walks their own road. Senior brother Ewan would never offend young Gia for my sake. Behind the flat tone, bitterness and helplessness flickered. Got it, Kael sighed. Damn Azure Cloud Pavilion. Good thing I never ended up joining them back then. Ivan said nothing. The air tightened between them, cold and motionless. They stood where they were, neither moving. A long breath passed. You, Kael's patience snapped. Aren't you leaving? Ivan's gaze shifted just slightly. You first, I'll wait a while. Kael coughed. I'm not in any hurry either. Silence stretched again. Their eyes met. A silent, mutual understanding sparked, and in near-perfect synchronization, they both moved. Asterisk loot, asterisk. Ivan went straight for the two men he'd cut down, his speed startling. A storage ring twirled on his fingertip before dropping into his palm. His fingers flew through its contents with cold efficiency. Kael targeted the band's leader and the fourth brother. Even as he rifled through their rings, his gaze kept sliding sideways toward Ivan's side, only to catch Ivan's equally hawkish glance darting back. Their stares collided midair. Each looked away with perfect nonchalance, but their hands quickened. Kael stared, disbelief bleeding into his voice. Are you genuinely that poor? Yes. Ivan looked up and nodded, perfectly earnest. I really am, you two. Exactly. Kael's face twisted with lament, though his hands never paused. Ever heard of Fung? Wu Yuan, I'm their head disciple. We're so, God's awful broke, we can't scrape together enough origin crystals to cultivate. A thread of genuine sympathy crossed Ivan's eyes. He said nothing more, just buried his head and continued tallying. Kael emptied the two rings he'd claimed. A grin split his face from ear to ear. The black cloud of being marked for assassination evaporated under a dazzling golden glow. He'd struck it rich. The rings together held over 3 million origin crystals, and that didn't even count the assorted treasures, elixirs, and materials. On the other side, a rare smile touched Ivan's face. Then, in unison, both men turned their eyes toward the fifth brother's corpse. This one, Kael put on a righteous mask. I killed him. I know, Ivan didn't flinch, but I restrained him. Without that, you wouldn't have had it so easy. The spoils, I'm owed a share. Kael shot him a look of pure contempt. Does your little sister know how greedy you are? You're eyeing a few origin crystals this hard. Ivan's expression said it all. Asterisk, we're both scavengers here. Where do you get off lecturing me? Asterisk. So what do we do? Kael said, exasperated. We can't just split it down the middle. That'd be way too. Good idea. Ivan nodded crisply. Let's split it, then. Under Kael's increasingly bulging stare, Ivan sat down cross-legged and laid out every item from the fifth brother's ring, one by one. His lips moved faintly. His eyes were calm, as if a high-speed abacus were running behind them with zero waste heat. 930, 7,650, 2 origin crystals, 3 top-grade spiritual armaments, 1 mid-grade treasure armament, 3 bottles of true essence pill. 7 4th-rank beast cores. He didn't even spare the storage ring itself. Market price by market price, he calculated aloud. Total value is 2,050,000, 9,380, 9 origin crystals. I take 30% for the restraint. You take 70% for the kill. Your share, 1,440,000, 1,572. He paused, then added with utter seriousness, for the remaining fraction of a crystal, I can round it up for you. Kael stared, dumbfounded. A asterisk fraction, asterisk of an origin crystal, rounded to a whole number. Take it. Ivan flipped his wrist and tossed over a storage ring. This ring is worth 50,000 at market. After deducting that, there are 1,390,000, 1,750, 3 origin crystals inside. Count them. Kael probed the ring almost on reflex. Origin crystals lay inside in a neat, silent pile. Not one extra, not half a shard less. He raised his head, and his entire view of Ivan rearranged itself. Even a third of a crystal had to be accounted for. Was this man an assassin or a bookkeeper? You know, he drew a deep breath, his voice laced with genuine awe. Why you don't have any friends? Ivan stood and turned to walk away. Wait, Kael held down his churning emotions and asked the question that had been gnawing at him. What was the bounty on me? Ivan's steps hesitated. Without looking back, he said, 2 million. Kael's pupils tightened. 2 million. More than what had just been handed to him. He stood among the bodies and dark pools of blood, and suddenly laughed. Whether at the price or something else, it was hard to tell. Ivan's stride faltered. 2 million origin crystals. That's higher than the average divine connection realm cultivator's bounty. Kael sucked in a cold breath, not from shock at the high price, but from the fact that Ivan had resisted such temptation. The bounty still stands. Those 5 were only the first wave, more will come. Ivan's voice paused, his steps slowed, as if ready to leave, but a trace of something unreadable flickered through his eyes. I understand. Kael nodded. Those who want me dead can only be from the Yang and Meng families. Ivan stayed silent, the unspoken acknowledgement settled between them. No matter how I think about it, it just sits wrong with me. Kael shook his head. On the black market, are there bounties on those 2 families? Yes, many, many. Ivan's words came slowly, weighted. And those bounties, they're still up. They are, few dare touch them. The backlog is huge. Kael's expression grew thoughtful. He spoke suddenly. Brother Yang, are you very poor? Want to get rich? I do. Kael's lips curved, a scorching light flaring behind his eyes. The wilderness lay quiet around them, the wind whisking dust across the empty space between. I've got a path to wealth right here. Want to hear it? Ivan's figure went rigid. Slowly, he turned. He looked Kael over from top to bottom, suspicion stark in his face. The distrust etched between his brows was unmistakable. If such a path existed, would he still be this destitute? You don't believe me? Kael raised an eyebrow. I don't. Ivan shook his head, then after a pause added, but you can tell me. The wind suddenly rose, swirling dead grass across the ground, much like the struggle twisting inside him. Just listening wouldn't cost a thing. What if perhaps he really had a method? Kael suppressed a glint of disdain, licked his lips, and cut straight to it. You told me the bounty board is flooded with names from the Yang and Meng families. Add them all together, how vast a fortune is that? Farewell. Ivan turned to leave. That was the grand plan. Anyone could think of it, but who had the life to claim such bounties without losing it in the spending? Brother Yang, Kael's brow furrowed deep. I thought you were a decent man. That's why I'm talking cooperation. You're not tempted at all. Not tempted. Ivan's answer came knife sharp. Even assassins ranked above me won't touch those people. If you're not afraid of dying, don't drag me into your grave. Think it over again. Your strength is formidable. There must be bounties on the board for those at Mystic Spirit Realm and above. Alone, it's too risky for me. If we join forces, forget Mystic Spirit Realm. Even a Divine Connection Realm target can be taken down in an instant. Ivan's steps paused for a heartbeat, but he didn't look back. Take care. Brother Yang, Kael's voice chased after him. Are you willing to swallow this? Ivan didn't stop walking, yet his silhouette grew heavier in the wilderness wind. I heard about it, Kael sighed. You and your sister have had it rough all these years. Not a shred of support from the family, nothing but humiliation and contempt. Yang Lan told me that years ago. Your mother secretly hid a few origin crystals to help you cultivate. When she was discovered, they nearly beat her to death. Ivan's stride slowed, the wind howled low, as if silent shadows churned around him. And Yang Lan that day, even a servant dared to treat her like that. Who knows how overbearing they are normally? Brother Yang, are you really willing to accept this? Ivan halted dead, his fists clenched until his knuckles whitened. The hatred rotting deep in his heart spread like an oil fire, making his whole frame shudder. Of course I hate them. He spun around, his eyes shot red. I want to kill every single person who bullied my sister and my mother, but I dare not gamble. I dare not seek revenge. If I make a move, they will find out for certain. He exhaled, ragged and defeated. Then it would be total ruin. So let me do it. Kael held Ivan's gaze. You run the diversion. I'll handle the killing. They'll never trace it back to you. The wind tangled between them. Ivan said nothing. Fine, I won't force you. Kael gave a short, regretful salute. Thanks for today. He turned away, his boots crushing dry grass with each step. Ivan watched his back retreat, the war inside him flaring, the beatings, the humiliation, the contempt his mother and siblings had swallowed for years. All of it rose up, raw and relentless. Wait. Kael spun back, face splitting into a grin. I knew you had fire in your blood. Ivan brushed aside the praise, his voice strained. Are you truly confident you can kill in one strike? You saw my sword with your own eyes. Kael jerked his chin toward the 5th man's corpse, a flicker of offense in his expression. Forget that fool. Even a Divine Connection Realm expert might not block it. Ivan hesitated. His cultivation outstripped Kael's, and yet, honestly, he wasn't certain he could withstand that blade either. Silence pressed in from the empty wilderness, so deep their breath seemed sharp. At last, Ivan forced out 2 words as if they cost him everything. I accept. Excellent. Kael's energy surged. Then, who's first? Wait a moment. Ivan drew a steadying breath, his gaze hardening again. I'll take you somewhere. Where? The black market. What for? If you want to collect bounties, you need an assassin's identity. 1,000 lie away. A desolate valley lay untouched by travelers. Outside its mouth, Ivan passed over a set of loose black robes and a silver mask. Put these on. They'll block others from probing you. Kael tested it with his perception. Sure enough, Ivan's aura turned hazy, unreadable, good craftsmanship. He slipped the disguise on without another word. Remember, Ivan added, a beat late, you'll have to return them afterward. Kael, Ivan led the way, taking them in wide, looping arcs before stopping at a cave mouth so plain it was almost invisible. A guard in black verified their identities, and they descended a cramped stone stairway. Suddenly, the space flung open. In the wide hall, figures in black robes and silver masks drifted about, each deliberately holding distance from the others. The air hummed with a wary, muted tension. Ivan paid the crowd no mind, guiding Kael down a narrow side passage. At its dead end, a cave barely 10 feet across held a single silent figure in black. Go inside. Is this really necessary? Kael grumbled. I'm just here to earn a little coin. Does it need to be this formal? The condition is keeping my identity hidden. Seeing the gravity in Ivan's face, Kael sighed, shook his head, and stepped in. The light was thin. The black-clad figure turned slowly. You want to be an assassin? Yeah, Kael nodded. Cultivation? Condensation, first stage. Code name. Kael paused. The name Ivan had chosen, Shadow, flashed through his mind, so it was an assassin tradition. Fat Foo. The syllables landed, and the figure opposite went rigid, as if caught utterly off guard. For a breath, only the faint shimmer of light along the stone walls moved. Channel a wisp of your aura into this. Without another syllable, the figure tossed him a jade token. Kael caught it cool, smooth against his palm. He threaded a trace of his aura inside, and information bloomed. Codename, Fat Foo, rank, C lower, clearance, low, missions completed, 0. Nothing else. Kael couldn't care less. Becoming an assassin had never been his aim. His eyes were fixed solely on the bounties the Yong and Meng families had posted. Emerging from the cave, Kael clapped Ivan on the shoulder. Can we get started now? We can. Ivan produced another jade token. All the bounties the black market publishes are stored in here. With your identity token, you can accept and submit missions directly. No need to travel back and forth. Kael flipped his own token over, a spark of curiosity in his eyes. That's handy. Aren't they worried about forgeries? No one dares. Ivan's tone darkened. The black market has specialists dedicated to verification. Once you're caught, he let the silence finish. Kael's mind churned. For this black market to operate so openly under the great family's noses, its backing had to be terrifying. Bounties, assassination contracts, secret explorations, treasure hunting. It touched nearly everything. So why don't I have access to that one? He tapped the token Ivan held. Ivan hesitated. Your rank's too low. You're still in a probationary period. Kael's mouth twitched. He let the matter drop and searched directly with his own token. Nearly at once, his own bounties surfaced, 2 of them, each 1,000,000 origin crystals, glaring like beacons. His laugh came out cold. My life's only worth 2 million. They have no clue what you're really capable of. Ivan shook his head. Pull up every target tied to those 2 families. Kael handed the token back, and then we move. Ivan took it and recited names without a flicker of hesitation. Yong Wai, steward of the Yong mine, Meridian opening 8th stage, bounty 200,000. Yong Yu, branch family, origin gathering realm 3rd tier, bounty 300,000. Yong Hong, direct bloodline, origin gathering realm 9th tier, bounty 500,000. The list ran on. The Yong Jaya clan alone had 40 or 50 members with prices on their heads, many carrying multiple hits. The combined reward exceeded 18 million origin crystals. The Meng Jaya side matched it. Together, the totals soared near 40 million, several times more than the other 3 families combined. Kael's eyes lit like a man glimpsing a vault of treasure. Brother Yong, we're about to get rich. It's not that simple. Ivan showed no enthusiasm. Many of them we'll never get close to. Others are too strong, even together. We'd be no match. I've calculated it. Between the 2 families, 62 can be taken with absolute certainty. Every one of them has earned their death. Total bounty pay out 20, 1,600,000 origin crystals. The look Kael gave Ivan morphed entirely, as if he were sizing up a priceless artifact. To figure all of that in a few breaths, not just the who, but the who deserved it, sent a wave of pure satisfaction through him. The feeling of only needing to act, never having to think, was intoxicating. He even found himself, for a brief second, weighing whether he should hand over a bigger cut, lock this partnership in for good. Who's first? Kael's blood was up. Ivan no longer hesitated. Young Y, the mine steward, far from the young main seat, not a prominent figure. Killing him will cause the least stir and give us time to hunt the next. Good. You know the ground best. You set the plan. Young Jaya mining grounds. Young Y's swollen bulk stood planted in the yard, a vicious grin smeared across his face as he watched several mine slaves strung up and dangling. Caught slacking, beat them. Mercy, Steward Yang, we barely caught our breath. We only rested a moment. Please, in your great mercy, let us go. We'll never dare again. Never dare. Yang Y's voice oozed menace. Of course you'll never dare again. Strike, beat them to death. Whips tore the air, stinking of old blood. Every lash spat crimson, droplets from flesh. The screams coiled around the yard. Young Y turned, finally satisfied, and waddled toward his quarters. He rubbed the storage ring on his finger, his greasy face alive with greed and pleasure. This month, he'd skimmed an extra handful of valuable ores. Another tidy little profit. Without warning, an icy voice sliced through the room behind him. Brother Yang, this man truly deserves to die. Who's there? A chill shot through Yang Y's heart. He whirled, and saw a flash of light, sword light. The dim chamber blazed for an instant, throwing Yang Y's twisted horror-struck face into brutal clarity. The air shrieked as it split. Fresh crimson rose from the severed neck with a faint, wet hiss, thud softer than a whisper, head parted from body. The corpse collapsed. Kael and Ivan stood behind it. Ivan bent and pried the storage ring free. His voice came out low, forced through clenched teeth. That year, my little sister was 3. She was playing near the mines, fell into a shaft by accident. That man, instead of saving her, he wanted to seal the shaft shut. If my mother hadn't fought him with her own life, my sister would have died long ago. His fists were so tight the knuckles had bleached white, veins of bloodshot rage, threading rough his eyes. Kael let out a slow breath and patted his shoulder. Feel any better? Not enough. Ivan lifted his head, the flames of vengeance now fully lit. This is only the beginning. Next, Yang Yu. Yang Yu's quarters. 2 figures in black robes and masks stood motionless, their stares flat and cold. Well, Kael tilted his head, voice muffled behind the mask. Ivan drew a deep breath. Back then, he was the one who framed me, accused me of stealing clan spirit pills. I was nearly beaten to death. You? Yang Yu's pupils contracted to pinpoints, a single syllable scraped from his throat. Whip! Sword light punched through his brow, a hair, thin line of crimson split his forehead. The moment blood droplets scattered, the light in Yang Yu's eyes collapsed and guttered out at a speed sharp enough to follow. The body pitched forward, and the storage ring on his finger vanished into empty air. Kael hefted the trembling female cultivator onto his shoulder, her body rigid with terror. Behind them, Ivan melted into the darkness. A broken voice drifted on the wind, faint and scattered. Next, Yang hung. The black market hall crouched under a heavy, oppressive silence. Shadows drifted past one another with sealed lips, every breath stifled, like creatures trapped in the deep sea. Then a shriek split the water. Huh. Every head snapped toward the sound. A stranger, oblivious to the warning glares, jabbed a trembling finger at his jade token. Look, the bounty on young Jaya, it's gone. Silence, a few faces twisted with contempt. A withdrawn bounty was hardly cause for alarm, but the man's voice cracked with hysteria. No, you don't understand. Half a day ago, there were dozens. Now half of them have vanished. A deathly stillness swallowed the hall, and then chaos erupted like oil thrown into a blazing pan. Another one. Yonghua, spirit profound second layer, 700,000 origin crystal. Heavens, someone's harvesting young Jaya. Who's that ruthless? A goal. Dranked assassin, but why would those old monsters suddenly go mad? No, look at the ranking. Bows dipped in unison. On the jade token, a single code. Name was climbing from the abyss, each step planted squarely on a freshly erased bounty. Vat Fugits him. His points were 0 before, all earned today, all built on young Jaya kills. Gasps rippled through the crowd. When they looked again at that absurd name, only one thought remained. This man had declared war on the young Jaya clan with his life. At the end of a side corridor, a black, robed administrator stared at his jade token, his fingertips whitening. He alone knew this fat foo had registered as an assassin less than a day ago. Fat Foot, who the hell are you? Outskirts of the young Jaya territory. Ancient trees bore leaves black as ink. Two figures, their auras crushed into near-nothingness, lay flattened among the branches. Their heartbeats slowed to a ghostly whisper. In the span of half a day, they had crossed 1,000 lie in combat. Over 20 lives had evaporated in silence. Each strike blade biting flesh, withdrawing was executed before the spirit light could scatter. By then, they were already far away. The only anomaly had been one female cultivator. She was left unharmed, tucked into a hiding place with origin crystal left beside her. By the time she emerged, the world had already shifted. Now they lay in wait for their 26th target. Yongji, Divine Connection Realm, 6th layer, Ivan's clan uncle, cousin of the clan head Yongsheng, and the very man who, years ago, had reported Ivan's mother for hoarding origin crystal. He'll take this path, it's his habit. Ivan's voice was a breath, flat as a frozen lake. Kael said nothing. He only listened. With every kill, Ivan peeled open an old scar. Piece by piece, the fragments knit together, and Kael finally glimpsed the bottomless sea of hatred beneath Ivan's feet. Indeed, they all deserved to die. What chilled Kael's blood more was how intimately Ivan knew these people. Every habit, every vice, seemed carved into his bones with a blade. Perhaps through countless sleepless nights, those details had been polished into pure instinct. Yongji, Ivan's voice cracked. The one I want to kill most. No one else comes close. Because of him, my mother kept her life, but she was left with a hidden ailment, still unhealed to this day. So that's why you cling to wealth, as if your life depends on it. Yes, Ivan admitted without a trace of shame. Unfortunately, after all these years, the ailment hasn't worsened, but curing it completely is harder than reaching the heavens. There will be a way. Kael's voice was soft. Once I find the ghost doctor. Ivan's entire body jolted. His throat moved slowly, as if swallowing a weight of 1,000 jun. Kael was about to speak again, but froze. In the distance, a current of spirit aura slithered low over the ground, drawing near. It's him. Ivan's fingernails sank soundlessly into the bark. A single leaf trembled, then stilled. The hour has come. A wind passed, but the shadows of the trees did not stir. The two figures melted into the deep ink darkness, their breathing fading into nothing. Yongji's divine connection cultivation granted him divine sense that blanketed the area. Even a speck of dust could scarcely hide. Beneath the ancient tree, Kael and Ivan pressed their auras to the level of silent boulders, waiting for their prey to step into the death trap. Footsteps drew closer, steady as a heartbeat. Then Ivan's arm spasmed violently. A convulsion slithered through his sinews like a serpent, spreading through his entire body in a heartbeat. Muscles seized, sweat burst out to drench his robes, dripping onto the dead leaves with sharp patters. His jaw clenched blood, froth seeping between his teeth. Kael shot him a sidelong glance, his eyes sharpening. What's happening? Ivan shook his head weakly, his face ghost, pale. Fall back, Kael's gaze cut toward the direction Yongji was about to appear, decision instant. But Ivan's grip tightened on the spear shaft until his knuckles bleached white. The agony drilled into his bones, yet his hatred burned fiercer. He could not retreat. If he retreated, the blood debt for his mother would slip beyond reach, and this painstakingly gathered courage might never coalesce again. Through clenched teeth, he forced out 2 words, "No, I can't." Kael read the look in his eyes, just like the day he had faced his own vengeance against Thuron. Even a mountain of blades would not stop him. Kael said nothing more. The spirit power within him coiled taut, killing intent condensing into a razor, thin thread waiting for the sword to draw. The footsteps stopped abruptly. Yongji's figure emerged 100 zhang away, and halted. That near imperceptible spasm from Ivan was a blazing flame to divine sense. Come out. Yongji's stare pinned the ancient tree, you skulking vermin. Boom, boom. 2 auras erupted from behind the ancient tree, churning fallen leaves into a vortex. Kael glanced at the still, trembling Ivan. I handle it alone. Together, Ivan's aura surged. A raw, guttural roar tore from his throat. His great spear shuddered, its tip shredding the air with a piercing shriek. Kael didn't waste a breath. 3 inches of sword glare blossomed from his longsword, killing intent boiling over. Move. The 2 figures shot out, one after the other, like thunderbolts. Assassins. Yongji saw their garb, a cold light flaring in his pupils. You're tired of living. Kael closed within a zhang. His arm flickered, and the sword of slaying was already aimed at its target. His eyes were hollow, heavy, his killing intent so dense it seemed solid, locking onto Yongji in an instant. Yongji's pupils contracted violently for a frozen moment. His body refused to obey. Damn! Yongji's soul sea-reeled. He had sensed this youth was only at the Kai Convergence realm, yet the ferocity of his spirit pressure and killing intent were rare even in the mystic spirit realm. Divine sense scrambled outward, barely tearing open a sliver of restraint, restoring freedom of movement. Courting death, he flipped his wrist, whipping out a longsword. Spirit power flooded the blade as he thrust forward. Clang! The crisp impact snapped the mid, grade treasure armament clean in two, the break smooth as glass. Yongji's expression warped with shock. Before he could react, Kael's second sword sliced toward his chest. In the razor, thin space between life and death, Yongji twisted his body, wringing out every drop of potential. Though the blade missed his vitals, it carved a wound half a kai long across his chest, flesh peeling open in silence, blood spurting into a misty spray. At that exact instant, a spear over a Zhang Long tore through the wind. A single point of cold light, its shriek shredding the sky, thrust forward wrapped in the full hatred of Ivan's heart, a strike meant to annihilate everything, mutual destruction. Yongji's eyelid twitched violently. Sensing that presence, he roared, "Ivan, it's you." Ivan offered no reply. His hands shook, his vision drowned in blood. Red killing intent, agony and hatred twisted him near to madness. Each spear strike grew heavier, but his body's spasms left him with only 70% of his true strength. Yongji spat curses, vile spawn, bastard whelped by a lowly slave girl. You dare try to assassinate me. Today, I'll purge the Yongjaya clan of your filth. Two silhouettes collided like thunderbolts. In a single breath, spear and sword clashed more than a dozen times, sparks cascading. Ivan struck with mad abandon, but his strength was greatly diminished. He couldn't suppress Yongji. He endured purely on the furious breath trapped in his chest. With each exchange, his muscles tore with searing agony. But Yongji, in his rage, forgot one thing: Ivan had not come alone. Kael stood motionless, his killing intent compressed to a razor's edge. The air itself seemed to solidify. He knew the noise had drawn attention. Yongji's clansmen could swarm in at any second. One strike, only one. If it failed, Ivan, his mother, his brother, all dead. The killing intent surged, then erupted in a blaze of sword, light. Die. His blade screamed, a bolt of lightning aimed at Yongji's spine. A bone, deep chill slithered down Yongji's back. Ivan alone was trouble enough. With Kael joining in, he stood no chance. Instantly he yanked his divine sense off Ivan and hurled it full force at Kael, stun him for a breath, shake off Ivan, flee back to the clan for backup. The logic was sound. A divine connection cultivator's divine sense could crush lower elm opponents like bugs. Too bad Yongji had picked the wrong target. Kael's soul force towered above his. The attack washed over him. His vision flickered for a heartbeat, then snapped clear like smoke scattered by wind. A cold bloom punched through Yongji's chest. Blood sprayed like scattered plum petals as the sword tip exploded out his front. He twisted his head around, confusion twisting his features. Yu Hao, not affected. Kael frowned, affected. His sight had dimmed a moment. That was it. Yongji's lips trembled, venom and hate clotting his throat. Kael unleashed over a dozen streams of prime arrival, sword kai. They slithered like vipers, racing through Yongji's meridians, snapping them like dry twigs, devouring his vitality by the inch. His body convulsed. Then his pupils shattered into nothing. Ivan was on one knee, white-knuckled, gulping air. Kael's face tightened. He grabbed Yongji's corpse in one hand, Ivan's arm in the other. A flicker. Leaves swirled into a vortex, and they vanished into the trees. Barely moments passed before a figure shot into the clearing. Yongfeng, his face a near mirror of Yongji's. Divine sense swept the area, snagging on the blood spatter. A sneer curled his lips. Bold fools. He lunged after the blood trail. Inside the black market hall, the noise was a fevered roar. Black robes and masks couldn't hide the wild excitement burning in every eye. All gazes locked onto the jade token, fixated on one thing: how far Fat Fu's rank could climb. Yong Kai, Spirit Profound 9th Layer, Bounty 1 million. Top 30. Cheers erupted like thunderclaps. Fat Fu's kill spree had finally slowed. Then a man's voice cut through, trembling. Yongji, Yongjaya Elder, Divine Connection 6th Layer, Bounty 1.5 million. Silence crashed down. Every head whipped to the ranking board. Fat Fu ranked 20, first. The ranking board flickered, light glaring. The top 50 rarely budged, yet now he'd vaulted 6 ranks in one leap. How high can he go? Someone breathed. Top 15. Top 10. First, the man who'd won earlier shrieked, eyes bloodshot, veins bulging on his forehead. I bet he hits first. 100,000 origin crystals. Mocking laughter exploded. First, have you gone mad? Lone Hawks ruled the board for 10 years. Fat Fu's nowhere close. The man stiffened his neck, clutching the jade token with fingers that creaked, knuckles white. Asterisk fat foo, climb. 100,000 crystals, my entire life's wealth. Asterisk. Kael had no idea he had just gained a fanatical devotee. His figure flickered through the forest, putting the Yongjaya territory far behind in a quarter hour. Yongfeng was slower, weaker than Yongji, but Kael had no desire to fight here. Lure one, and you lured a swarm. It's fine now, Ivan said, his voice steady again. Let go. Kael halted. He didn't scold, just asked, what happened back there? Ivan stared at Yongji's corpse for a long moment before cupping his fists. Thank you. All these years, the thought of his mother's suffering had made him hunger to devour the man raw. Kael waved it off. It's cooperation. Since he paused, his gaze turning cold. He's catching up. Can you still fight? Ivan hesitated, then nodded. It won't flare up again for a while. The cooperation continues. Good. Kael's lips curved. Then we wait for him. We wait? Yongfeng tore through the forest, following the blood drops. As a Yongjaya direct descendant, he'd never imagined anyone in the northern border would dare cross him. Without hesitation, he plunged deeper. Then he skidded to a halt. Ahead, two figures stood in silence, a familiar corpse at their feet. Night smothered the wilderness, two black, robed, masked shapes waiting. Yongji's body sprawled beside them. Second brother, Yongfeng's pupils shrank to pinpricks, veins threading his eyes crimson. You did this. Yes, Kael said flatly. Yongfeng's teeth ground together. A jade communication talisman had already slipped into his palm. Rage burned, but he wasn't stupid. Yongji had been stronger, and still died. He himself stood no chance. He cursed his reckless pursuit. Asterisk SHHK, asterisk. The instant the talisman appeared, Kael's sword lashed out. Sword Kai obliterated it, jade fragments scattering like frozen moonlight. Who are you? Yongfeng locked eyes with Kael. Know him? Kael asked Ivan. Ivan nodded, voice like a sharpened blade. Yongfeng, Yongjaya direct line, divine connection third layer, Yongji's own younger brother. Not on the bounty list. No surprise there. Ivan's tone was flat. 3 years back, someone offended him by accident. He tortured the man for over a month till death. The man's friends and family slaughtered to the last, their wealth split between him and Yongji. Plenty of such cases, except everyone's dead, so naturally, no bounties. That vicious, Kael's eyebrows rose, trash as expected. Yongfeng had already recognized Ivan's voice. He gasped, Ivan you, audacious, conspiring with an outsider to murder a clansman, a capital crime. Clansman? Ivan's voice was a drawn knife. When have you ever treated us as such? Boom, his aura erupted, soaring to its peak. My little sister was young, naive. She offended you, and you nearly killed her with a palm strike. Clansmen, in your eyes, we're less than slaves. Kael's spiritual sense twitched. Ivan's cultivation base had somehow climbed. You, Yongfeng's face drained. Reckless fool. If the family head learns of this, you'll suffer 1,000 deaths. First, Kael cut him off. He won't find out. Second, he raised his longsword, killing intent rising like a tidal wave. You're too slow. Today, you're the one dying. Understand? He glanced at Ivan. Brother Yang, the usual. Yes. Both attacks fell in unison, sword Kai and spear light intertwined, a blast of energy erupting. The shockwave sent stones shattering, gravel raining against the rock walls. Yongfeng didn't even have time to scream. Their combined strike disintegrated him in an instant. The Yongjaya main hall sat heavy with silence. Yongsheng's face was iron, his eyes frigid. Any news? None. An elder shook his head. I've sent inquiries. Many have taken the bounty. Even the Ma brothers are moving. It should be soon. Go to Yuishan City, Yongsheng said, voice flat. Raise the bounty to 3 million. The elder hesitated. Family head with the Mengjaya's 1 million, that's 4 million. For a single Kai convergence cultivator, isn't that? A violent spiritual pressure exploded before he could finish. Boom! Yongsheng's aura raged, annihilating his chair to dust. Teacups shattered, shards spraying, the air in the room slicing like blades. Before Linner finishes closed cultivation, Yongsheng's gaze turned to absolute zero. He must die. The sooner the better. Understand? The elder's heart seized. He bowed hastily. Yes, I'll handle it immediately. The Mengjaya estate was no calmer. Father, is that man dead yet? Meng Qin stormed in, her bruised face a grotesque mask of malice. Kael's 2 slaps had been merciless. The swelling twisted her features into something hideous, and the venom in her eyes only made it worse. Not yet, Meng Ch. Huan said darkly, but with the bounty on him, he won't last long. His hatred for Kael matched his daughters, his children crippled, his town guardian near death, the greatest shame the Mungjaya had ever suffered. I don't understand. Meng Qin ground her teeth. Why does the old ancestor listen to Zhuo Yang? If he'd let the family act, that man would already be dead. Do nothing reckless, Meng Ch, Wan snapped. The old ancestor has his reasons. You think he doesn't know about the bounty? He simply looks the other way. At that moment, a steward hurried in. A steward slipped into the hall and dipped low. Family head, young miss. Meng Qin whirled toward him. Any news? Is he dead? No, young miss. The Yong clan has just sent word. They've raised the bounty on that man to 3 million origin crystals. 3 million, Meng Ch. Wan's eyes narrowed to slits, and a thin smile that held no warmth crept across his lips. Brother Yang is certainly impatient. In that case, we can't let the Meng clan be seen as inferior. Raise our own bounty to 5 million. The steward retreated at once to carry out the order. Father, Meng Qin rounded on him, her voice sharp with indignation. Must you turn everything into a contest with Uncle Yang? Brother Yang Lin will be furious when he learns of this. Brother Yang Lin, Meng Ch. Wan turned a lazy glance on his daughter. You seem to care a great deal more about him than about your own elder brother, Jiang. That good for nothing. Meng Qin's lip curled. He vanished off to train years ago and hasn't spared a word since. He doesn't even know his sister's been humiliated like this. Rest easy, Meng Ch. Wan said slowly. He will return before the secret realm opens. I'll see for myself then whether the Yong clan's genius is stronger, or my killing son of the Meng clan. From that moment on, no one in the hall spoke of Kael again. He might as well already have been a corpse. In a shadowed courtyard tucked deep within Yuishan City, the black market's local branch operated in murmurs and half-flight. An elder of the Yong clan slid a storage ring across the table. Raise it. The bounty on that Kael, raise it to 3 million origin crystals. The man in black across from him wore an odd expression. At a time like this, they still had the presence of mind to put a price on someone else's head. Their nerve was almost admirable. As the bounty was being processed, the black-clad man's composure finally cracked. Your clan, has there been any trouble today? None. The elder paused, a flicker of suspicion crossing his face. Why do you ask? Instead of answering, the black-clad man passed over a jade token. The elder accepted it and probed it with his spiritual sense. In the space of a single breath, his fingers began to tremble violently. The knuckles whitened from the force of his grip, threatening to crush the token into dust. His pupils shrank to pinpoints, and all color bled from his face. In the mountain valley, the air still smelled faintly of blood. After Yong Feng fell, only 2 of the Yong clan's bounty targets remained. Even stared at the distant clan compound, his jaw tight. The risk is too great, he said at last. Yong Ji cost us time. Yong Feng cost us even more. The last 2 are inside the Yong clan's inner grounds. If we force an attack, the chance of failure is 70%. He let out a slow breath and lowered his head. This was my shortcoming. My apologies. It's fine. Kael waved a hand. Nothing is ever perfect. 27 kills already exceed what I could have expected. If I'd been on my own, I doubt I'd have managed half that. He looked at Ivan, the corner of his mouth tugging upward. So, feel avenged yet? For a long moment, Ivan remained silent. All the agony he'd suppressed for years had erupted today, and the release was still crashing through his chest like a river in flood. I do, he said, the words carrying a relief he had never known. I have never felt this avenged. I told you before, Kael said, that half smile still on his face. Work with me, and you'll never regret it. Ivan gave no reply, but his silence said enough. To him, Kael was the best partner he could have hoped for, a fighter of monstrous ability, lethally decisive, daring yet meticulous, and above all, someone who valued loyalty. Without Kael, his chance at revenge would have been little more than a fool's dream. As for the Meng clan, Ivan reined in his emotions. I'm far less familiar with them than with the Yong clan. It won't go so smoothly. Kael gave his shoulder a light pat. Brother Yong, do your best. No need to force anything. Ivan nodded and was about to speak when his gaze fell on the jade token in his hand. His expression froze. What is it? Kael asked. The Yong clan has raised your bounty to 3 million origin crystals. Kael narrowed his eyes. 3 million, quite the grand gesture. Storming their compound today truly was the right decision. Ivan hesitated, then added, also the Meng clan raised it to 5 million. 5 million? Kael's expression sobered instantly. He fixed his stare on Ivan. Brother Yong, on the Meng clan side, you must give it everything. Devise the most flawless assassination plan you can for me. Ivan found himself at a loss for words. Meanwhile, in the main hall of the Young clan, Yong Shong paced with his hands clasped behind his back, irritation still simmering in his chest. A servant slipped in, stepping as lightly as a cat on hot bricks. "Master, a steward at the mine is dead." "Dead is dead." Yong Shong's brows knotted. "You come to report a trifling matter like this. Get out." The servant fled, but mere moments later he returned, his face now ashen. "Master, another death. A shopkeeper in one of our stores, a branch clan member." Yong Shong slowly turned, the chill in his gaze sharpening. "Are you deaf? Pass these matters to the clan's internal affairs and stop bothering me." The servant's legs nearly gave out as he stumbled off, yet before the time it took to finish a cup of tea, he came barging in a third time, shaking like a reed in a gale. Who died this time? Yong Shong was so furious, he actually laughed, though a glint of killing intent streaked through his eyes. "Why, Yong Hong, a direct line descendant." Yong Shong's laughter died. Yong Hong, a junior clansman with decent talent, someone he vaguely remembered. 3 deaths in a single day was no ordinary misfortune. Before the storm, clouds on his brow could fully gather. The elder, who had been dispatched to Yuishan City, strode in, alarm etched across every line of his face. "Master, something terrible has happened." "Speak." "Someone is slaughtering our Yong clan's descendants. Word from the black market confirms it. 26 bounties, 26 dead." The elder's throat bobbed. He'd overlooked Yong Feng, whose name hadn't been on the bounty board. Yong Shong's face turned a cold iron, gray in an instant. 26 lives, more than half from the direct line, and several were close kin he'd long relied upon as pillars of the clan. "Boom!" He lashed out with his palm, and the white jade chair beside him exploded into a cloud of powder. Who did this? Bloodshot veins rose in his eyes, and the words ground out between his clenched teeth. "What's the code name?" "Fu, Fat Fu." At the black market outpost, a crowd of cultivators stared fixedly at the bounty jade token hovering in the air. A long stretch of time passed, but neither the rankings nor the bounty amounts shifted. "Looks like he's resting," someone murmured. "From nowhere to 20, first place in a single day unheard of, the man's a damned monster." Amid the jeers and muttered praise, the cultivator who had wagered 100,000 origin crystals clenched his fists tight. 21st, that wasn't enough. He wanted first place. "Hand it over," the victor who had bested him earlier said, spreading his palm open. The surrounding crowd erupted in jeering laughter. The gambler's eyes reddened with the pain of loss, his heart bleeding out, but he could only force 2 words through gritted teeth: "I'll pay it." And then a sharp cry cut through the noise. "Wait! Fat Fu's rank just moved again. 20th. The hand already reaching for the origin crystals froze in mid-motion. Ecstasy nearly split the gambler's face wide open. "Ha ha ha, I knew it. I didn't lose. I still have a chance. Fat Fu, keep going." No one could spare a laugh for him. Someone frowned and said, "But the Yong clan's bounties still have 2 left untouched." He took on other bounties. "Quick, look." "No need to look." Another voice cut in, hoarse and strange. "Look at the Meng clan's bounties instead." In the space of a heartbeat, a deathly silence swept through the hall. On the jade token, several of the Meng clan's bounties had silently vanished. The explosion came an instant later. After butchering the Yong clan, now he's got his eyes on the Meng clan. What kind of fiend is this Fat Fu? Since when did the northern territory of the eastern wastes breed such a calamity? Is he really going to sprint all the way to first place over the corpses of 2 clans? He can do it. He absolutely can. The gambler's eyes shone with a feverish light. I have absolute faith in Fat Fu. Yong Shong's mood, however, had curdled into something far fouler than a pool of stagnant mud. The elder stood with his hands at his sides, delivering his report. All the corpses have been examined. The killer's swordsmanship is profound, every strike lethal. An immediate retreat after each kill, leaving not a single trace behind. Among all the famed assassins listed in the black market, none possesses blade, work like this. "Investigate," Yong Shong said, his face wiped clean of any expression. "Before the ancestors are alerted, get to the bottom of this." "Master," the elder hesitated, an ugly truth stuck in his throat. "There's one more thing. Yong Feng is also dead. Our losses aren't 26, they're 27. Yong Shong jerked as if he'd been struck. His face drained to the cold blue of raw iron, and the whites of his eyes filled with a web of bloodshot lines. Boom! The newly replaced white jade chair detonated into dust. Tear the earth apart, a roar ripped from his throat. Drag that Fat Fu into the light, grind his bones, and scatter his ashes. Deep into the night, the outskirts of Meng clan territory lay buried in black shadow. The chirp of insects rose and fell in a scattered rhythm. Two figures, suppressing every trace of their auras, melded into the darkness like slender blades and halted in the deepest black. Kael's fingertips rested lightly on his sword hilt. A sharp glint flickered in the depths of his eyes. Ivan drew a worn map from his robes, spread it open in the thick night, and tapped a location. Meng Jai, direct lineage, spirit profound 8th layer. This courtyard is his residence. His voice sank to a near whisper. But there's only a 50% chance he's inside right now. A night breeze teased the edges of the map. The insect song drifted, near and far. Kael squinted, his fingers tightening silently around the hilt. 50% is enough. Ivan lifted his head, and his next words came out heavy. It's time. We should stop now. He had his own considerations.